Last time we spent a few days in Jawbone Valley and rolled through Death Valley during a dust storm. After that, we escaped to Las Vegas for some well-needed air. I rolled into Las Vegas and found some parking right by the airport, and eventually wound up in a shopping center close to the airport. We spent the day watching the planes come in, and as the sun was going down, a security guard came and ran us off. So he did point us downtown to one of the casinos that would let you stay overnight for free in their parking lot. So that's where we wound up. Not a huge fan of big, bright cities, but there was some interesting stuff in Las Vegas, and so it was an interesting experience. But I prefer the wilderness, and wound up in Needles, California, which is south of Las Vegas, believe it or not. And just outside of Needles was some BLM land known as the Heart of the Mojave. So after crawling into this wash, and I'm not sure how the bus made it through, but apparently those big wheels in the rear had very little trouble getting through. I did pull the bike off shortly after I arrived and rode around a little bit and discovered this new plant that was everywhere in the desert. It's called creosote. And the way I discovered it was getting up close to it, riding without any kind of riding gear, just a t-shirt through the desert. I hit a couple of these branches that were sticking out, and this is just a brushy plant, but it's got some spikes on it. I don't want to call them thorns, but they're hard as a rock, and they ripped my arm open a couple of places. So that was my introduction to creosote. So after my short ride around the bus, I determined it was way too sandy for me to continue riding on these street tires. So I pulled out the tires that I purchased in Las Vegas and mounted them on my motorcycle so I could ride around in the sand. And it really didn't seem to make much difference, because just parked in this wash, I couldn't even get out of where I had the motorcycle parked. It was so soft, and it's kind of like riding around in styrofoam pellets. It was really crazy. Once I got up on this little berm here, I rode this berm for miles, and it was really good to be it was really good to be on gravel and a hard surface. And I saw the direction I wanted to go. It's straight towards those small hills in the distance. I knew that there would be something interesting in those hills, because this whole area is volcanic. Sure, it's thousands of years old, but at one time this was a very volcanically active place. So that's what I was in search of, some geology and interesting riding. And you can see I'm riding every piece of brush and greenish looking thing on the right and left. That's all creosote. And at least I'm geared up today. I have my gloves on and jacket and some riding pants, so when I brush up against them, I don't get ripped to shreds. But I kept riding until I couldn't ride anymore on this road, and then I had to cross a few washes, and this was my first introduction into washes too. Washes, if you don't know, are basically creek beds in the desert that have no water in them. When it does rain occasionally in the desert, the water rushes down these creek beds, and then they pretty much immediately dry up. And I'm descending into a small wash here. But that's how you get across the desert many times, is you're going to have to cross washes. Sometimes the only way up, in this case, the only way up to these mountains. This is a wash I'm running across here too. It's very sandy. It's very different than the regular desert. When I left the bus, I was in a wash. It was fairly firm. compared to a lot of these things, but it was a unique and interesting experience riding in the wash, because I'm from the South. We've got sand in the South. A lot of times you can see me struggling here. It really kind of caught me off guard how deep and sandy it is. You can see my handlebars going back and forth here, and I'm really having a hard time with it. And like I was saying, I'm from the South. We've got sand in the South, but usually it's around riverbeds or places where water has washed sand up into an area. So usually you don't experience much sand unless you're crossing a creek or around a river or something like that. But I do know how to ride in sand. I just don't know how to ride. At this point, I didn't know how to ride 30, 40, 50 miles an hour in sand, because it's very difficult. The deeper the sand, the harder it is to ride in it. And you can see me struggling a little bit, and it kind of catches up to me up here when the other problem with these washes is especially washes like this is a very long wash, and you can see I'm following tracks, but all the tracks that I'm following are four wheels. So it's Jeeps and four-wheelers, and there's no motorcycles up here. I'm the only motorcycle tracks that I saw up here were mine. But I'm coming to a spot where I'm going to crawl up onto some harder sand coming out of this wash, and I just dump it here. And it, at least crashing in sand, hopefully you're going to crash into the soft sand that you're riding in. But it's hard to get started, it's hard to turn, it's hard to maintain speed. It's very difficult. Most sand riders will tell you got to move back on the seat to get your front wheel up out of the sand. The more weight you have over the front wheel, the harder it is to turn the motorcycle and to power on. And you need more weight towards the rear wheel to get traction. If your front wheel's cutting into the dirt, you're not going to have much traction, and you're not going to be able to steer as well. So what I finally decided was, well, here's another wash that I'm going into, and this is very typical, at least in Arizona. And we're in California here, but as I rode a lot in Arizona, discovered that there was a lot of these washes that were just uncrossable. This is one that somebody said, "Screw it, I'm going across this wash," and they cut an entrance and an exit to this wash, and otherwise sometimes you can ride for miles to find a way around some of these deep washes. And I've been in some washes that are 8, 10, 15 feet deep, and they're vertical, so you gotta find the ways across. And anyway, I found the way across and got up into the hills that I was looking for. They look like mountains from a distance, but they just turned out that they're really just hills. And trying to find the way over the mountains, a good peak on top of the mountains or the hills, and got to a certain point up here and had to turn around. Just found the dead end, and there's lots of dead ends in the desert. So that was a new experience too, just running down roads and finding lots and lots of dead ends. But this is nice, a nice end of the road here. Got a chance to peek around and look for other roads, and there's a road on the other side of this hill, just don't know how to get to it. But so turned around, and on the way back I found some interesting geology and a little spot up here to take a break from the heat. these are the kinds of exciting things I like finding on my own. I really enjoy visiting other people's finds, but I really prefer to find stuff on my own, which is kind of why I just wing it a lot of times. And this is a cool little magma chamber. It's got lots of little holes in it, and I just think it's cool as shit. Used to be hot boiling rock, and some of the chambers emptied out and left these little empty spaces with holes where the magma actually flowed through, which is pretty freaking cool. And it's very cool temperature wise too. It's probably 10-15 degrees cooler inside this little rock spot. So anyway, I'm having a blast. Finally found a way halfway up the mountain after lots of struggling through the sandy 2-foot deep washes that I had to ride through, but this is all worth it. All the struggle, worth it. Let's see what else is out there. Before I left heart of the Mojave, I had to take care of some business. The computer was really giving me some heartache, so I had to put it out of my misery. Made me feel better anyway. Join us next time as we move further into the Mojave Desert and the Mojave Preserve. So if you haven't subscribed yet, click the subscribe button. And once you do that, you can click this bell to get notifications every time a new video comes out. So click subscribe and hit the notification bell. And I will see you on the next video.